Houston rapper Cartel Bo is staring down a serious prison sentence over his ties to street violence, a development that's brought his fast-rising music career to a screeching halt. But the fallout doesn't stop there. His legal troubles have ignited a chaotic battle over the people closest to him, one that's only getting messier by the day. It started with a public feud. Cartel Bo found himself at odds with the Houston Police Officers Union after a viral video where he labeled the Lakewood area Murderwood. The clip exploded online, racking up over 1 million views and sparking real tension between the rapper and law enforcement. For a moment, it looked like he was carving out a role as the voice of his neighborhood, someone willing to say out loud what he believed others were too afraid to admit. Most artists would have let the moment fade. Cartel Bo didn't. He went on television and escalated things, claiming the Houston Police Department was harassing him and pressuring venues to cancel his shows. That's not a small accusation. It's a claim that law enforcement was actively working to destroy his ability to make a living. People paid attention. For a brief stretch, it seemed like he might actually win the narrative. Then the union answered back, and they didn't soften the blow. They flatly denied contacting any venues, calling the accusation completely false, and said their issue wasn't with his music, but with his credibility, pointing out that no one in the community actually calls Lakewood Murderwood. That alone would have shifted the conversation. But the union pushed further, revealing publicly that Cartel Bo was on probation tied to 4 separate domestic violence cases. Not one incident. 4. In an instant, the story changed shape. This was no longer a rapper standing up to police overreach. This was a man with a documented pattern, and that pattern was suddenly making national headlines. Cartel Bo and his attorney, Carl Moore, tried to respond, pushing back on the union's statements and raising claims that police had doxed his private residence. But fighting back is difficult when the record itself tells a different story. And then came the warrant. Cartel Bo and his baby's mother were arrested in Houston for violating a protective order, the very kind of order meant to keep someone safe from him. The man who'd spent weeks claiming police were trying to ruin his career had just stepped directly into the consequences of a court mandate. Suddenly, this wasn't about Murderwood anymore. It wasn't about canceled shows. It was about what happens when the cameras turn off. And this wasn't his first brush with the system, not by a long shot. To understand where Cartel Bo is now, you have to go back to where his name first made headlines, because that origin story says a lot about the risks he was willing to take. It started with a music video. Cartel Bo, born Warren Brown, and fellow rapper Max O'Cream, real name Emuan Biosa, were filming a video for their song Hova at Lakewood Park in Houston. On the surface, it looked like a typical shoot. But what ended up in frame would become one of the most damaging pieces of evidence in recent Houston rap history. Nearly 24 alleged members of the 52 Hoover Gangster Crips appeared in the video as extras, several of them holding loaded firearms on camera. Not props. Real guns. To make matters worse, the shoot took place near Hillard Elementary School, right around the time school was letting out. Children walked straight into frame, passing convicted felons holding weapons for the camera. When police arrived on scene, most of the group scattered, leaving the guns behind. The moment was caught on camera too, meaning the footage essentially documented its own evidence. The video was uploaded to Worldstar Hip Hop's YouTube channel, racked up nearly 2 million views, and law enforcement used it to identify everyone involved. Officers and federal agents went through the footage frame by frame, cross-referencing faces with criminal records. In the end, 20 people were arrested on illegal weapons possession charges. Houston's police chief at the time didn't hold back, calling the group dangerous and saying they showed no respect for human life. The story even made national news, with the Breakfast Club naming the 2 rappers their donkey of the day, with host Charlemagne the God pointing out that mixing real crime with a rap career doesn't end well. But within that group, Cartel Bo's situation stood apart. He wasn't just another face in the video. He was the lead artist, and as a convicted felon, he understood exactly what being filmed alongside those weapons meant. He was already facing multiple pending charges, including unlawful possession of a firearm as a felon at both the state and federal level, plus a charge for threatening an officer during transport. Then he disappeared. Released on bond and ordered to wear an ankle monitor, Cartel Bo cut it off and went on the run. That single decision, removing the monitor and going silent, marked the point where his music career and his legal troubles could no longer coexist in the same lane. While he was missing, the rest of the defendants from the Hova video were processed through the system. Charges stacked up at both the state and federal level, and prosecutors made it clear the case was being pursued fully. 11 felons, all from Houston, all caught on camera with loaded weapons, ended up working through the federal system one by one, each pleading guilty to unlawful possession of a firearm by a convicted felon. When the sentencing came down, Cartel Bo received the harshest punishment of the group, 78 months, 6.5 years in federal prison, with no early release for good behavior. The other defendants received lighter sentences, ranging from 20 to 60 months. As the face of the video and the lead artist, the consequences landed heaviest on him. That raises an obvious question. After serving that time, did anything change? Because the 4 domestic violence cases the police union brought up years later weren't ancient history. They were active, tied to a probation period with strict conditions he was legally required to follow. A man who served federal time, rebuilt his career, and then ended up back under court supervision for 4 domestic violence cases isn't someone the courts tend to overlook. And the protective order violation that led to his most recent arrest only reinforced that the terms of his release weren't just being stretched. They were being broken. Probation exists to give someone a path forward. A protective order exists because someone told a judge they were afraid, and the court believed them. Violating it isn't an oversight. It's a decision. There's something almost ironic about the timing of his viral moment. He'd done his time, returned to Houston, and was rebuilding his music career, doing exactly what artists do after serving a sentence. Then came the Murderwood video, controversial, location-specific, and built for attention. It worked, pulling in over 1 million views and igniting a real public feud. But the police union wasn't going to let the label go unchallenged, denying his claims and questioning why he'd brand his own community that way. Then came the television interview, where Cartel Bo and his attorney framed him as a man being targeted by law enforcement. It was a compelling pitch, until the union's response shifted the entire conversation toward his actual record. His attorney tried to redirect attention back to the alleged doxing of his residence. But defending that claim becomes far harder when the public is also hearing about an active probation tied to 4 domestic violence cases. What the interview really did was extend the story's shelf life, keeping Cartel Bo in the headlines and keeping law enforcement watching closely. Meanwhile, the Houston rap community largely stayed quiet, not out of indifference, but because the details being discussed were hard to defend. It's worth noting that Lakewood Park, the same location from the Hova video, is the same neighborhood he later branded Murderwood years afterward. Same park, same community, same artist, just older, with a federal conviction behind him. Whether that reflects loyalty to where he's from or an inability to move past it depends on who you ask. The arrest for violating the protective order wasn't shocking to anyone who'd been following the story. In Texas, protective orders are legal tools meant to restrict contact and protect someone the court has determined is at risk. Violating one isn't a misunderstanding. It's a choice to override a court's decision to keep another person safe. And the fact that his baby's mother was arrested in the same incident only adds complexity that the courts will now have to sort through. Looking at the full arc of Warren Brown's story, from coming up in Northeast Houston's rap scene alongside Max O'Cream, who walked away from the Hova case with no charges at all, to cutting off an ankle monitor, going on the run, serving federal time, returning home, and now facing a probation violation tied to a protective order, there were multiple points along the way where a different choice was possible. The ankle monitor, the domestic violence cases, the protective order itself. Each one represented a fork in the road, and the same path kept getting chosen. Whatever motivated the Houston Police Officers Union to release his record publicly, they didn't invent the domestic violence cases or the probation status. That information already existed. And the people most impacted by what's documented in that file aren't the union or the music industry. They're private individuals whose names never made the headlines. Cartel Bo built an identity around the rawness of his corner of Houston. The Murderwood label, the Hova video, the defiant TV appearance. All of it played as a performance of toughness. But the conduct that finally caught up with him in court wasn't staged for a camera. It was documented in protective order filings and probation records. What happens next depends on the courts. Probation violations stacked on top of existing domestic violence charges can trigger a revocation hearing. And for someone with a federal felony history, that rarely goes lightly. Cartel Bo spent early 2026 telling the public that police were out to erase him. As it turns out, the real threat to his future was never law enforcement calling venues. It was a paper trail that started long before murder would, and one that keeps getting longer. If this story stood out to you, let us know your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more updates as this case continues to unfold.